So look, we've been on this journey for what? Today's the 21st. So we've been on this journey for about 10 days now. And I'm on a mission, like I said before, to really just help some people get some podcasts launched, get some podcasts off and running, to really just rock and really just roll. So today I'm gonna introduce myself, and after I introduce myself, then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open this thing up for questions, right? Because I want you all to have the opportunity to ask whatever questions that you have regarding podcasting. And I want you to bring whatever fears you have, whatever hesitancies that you have around podcasting, and just put those things out there on the floor. Because I want you all to have the tools to be successful to launch a podcast. My name is Jonathan Jones. I'm the host of the Beyond the Ball podcast. I'm also the host of Speak Your Success. And what I do is I work with colleges, universities, as well as athletic teams and organizations to help student athletes and young professionals to thrive, right, holistically. So that's going outside of the degree. We're talking life skills. We're talking personal development. We're talking professional development. And of course, mental health strategies, because we know that that's been something that's been huge here lately, post-pandemic, and just everything that's been taking place throughout the course of the world. So I want to open this thing up, right? We've already talked about identifying the purpose of your podcast. We've already talked about really identifying who you're striving to serve and support in regards to your podcast. So now I want to give you all the opportunity to ask me any question that you have regarding getting a podcast off the ground, or even if you want to come to the stage and just share like your idea or your thought for a podcast. And if you would like to hear feedback, then I'm more than willing to offer that for you. So at this time, raise your hand if you're on Clubhouse, or if you're on Periscope or YouTube. Drop your comment, drop your question, because I want to, like I said, I want to help you. I want to be the Pippin to your Jordan. Okay, we got a question. First question coming to the stage. We got Coach Yaz. Coach Yaz, how we doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself, John?
I'm doing good. Everything's going well on this side. What can we do for you? How can we help you?
Yes, I've got a podcast. Just so for everyone, hi guys, I'm Coach. My name's Yas. I'm a football coach based in London, soccer coach, as you guys may know it. Basically, I've got a podcast where I'm interviewing a range of different coaches and I guess other industry professionals. Doing okay in terms of building traction on maybe Spotify.
Okay.
I recently managed to pull off a big New Year's Day podcast. I actually interviewed Shaq.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Honestly, I was still pinching myself because of it. But I guess my question really comes from the idea of, okay, I'm doing all right on terms of Spotify and Apple, but what do I do in terms of trying to push that platform onto YouTube or making more visual content? Because I'm conscious that not all my guests are big. And is that something that maybe I should kind of just limit and restrict to some of the bigger guests like Shaq and people of that sort of ilk? Or should I now transform all the content I'm doing into YouTube content? Or I don't know, it's just a question to kind of consider which avenue to go down, or whether it's worth doing it yet.
Yeah, definitely, man. First, I want to give you hats off, man, for getting Shaq on your show. That's major, dude, to be able to say you had Shaq on your show. I think that goes without saying that's enormous. So kudos on that. But the question that I would just Happy New Year to you, Elizabeth Lucy. So the question the answer that I would just give to you would be just thinking about what's your bandwidth. Right. So like, how much time do you have to now devote, excuse me, to potentially potentially do video content, edit video content, putting it up on YouTube, and then also working with that platform, because YouTube basically is another form of social media. Excuse me, y'all. I don't know what's going on. So I would say that, Coach. Yeah. So if you're wanting to get it on other platforms, then I would just say begin to think about and assess that. So begin to think about how much time do you have to allocate a week to doing YouTube content. Of course, I think it's a great avenue to expand your reach. I think it's a great opportunity to get and position yourself on that platform, in addition to, you know, Spotify and Apple and whatever other platforms your podcast might be hosted on. But yeah, man, I would just really encourage you in that. And when it comes to a guest being a big name or a small name, what I've seen on my own podcast, as well as what I've seen and heard from some other guests that I know as well, they've made mention that some of their best performing shows were not the individuals with the big names, because sometimes an individual with the big name may or may not share your show. They may or may not share that content. So that's also something to consider as well. So that would be my advice to you. That would be my insight to you. Was that helpful at all? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely give you some things to think about. I think one thing I'm definitely thankful of is that Shaq actually reshared my show on his Instagram page, which was fantastic for me. In terms of, you know, your question around the bandwidth aspect, I'm currently releasing 3 episodes a week, and I find myself probably recording about 7 or 8. So just to kind of give a bit more context around the show itself, is very much around the person's journey. So it's kind of timeless content, so it doesn't have to be released in line with a certain time period, or it's literally, this is Shaq's journey, these are some of the questions about it, and you know, some of the lessons that he's learned across his journey. So I can kind of release it at any point, which allows me a bit more freedom in terms of when to record and when I can release it, if that makes sense. So I guess in terms of bandwidth, and I guess answering that point, I feel like I've got the bandwidth for it. It's just you know, how much or how soon, or whether it is a step worth taking straight away or not. So I guess that's probably where my question or my thought process more comes from.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So with you saying you have the bandwidth, and you saying that you release 3 episodes a week, I think that's dope. Just to be able to say that you're in a position to do that, and that you have listeners that are looking to hear from you that often. So I think that's really great. But when I was talking about in terms of bandwidth, I was just talking about just like the time investment, or for you editing the episodes, or unless you ship it out somewhere else and have somebody else edit them or do things like that. But I mean, I think it's a great move to have your content on YouTube. I put mine on YouTube because I do video as well. So I have the audio, and then I put the video on YouTube because I know some people like to have the visual. That's why I'm also streaming right now on audio with Clubhouse, as well as doing the visual on YouTube right now as we speak here. So it really comes down to preference. And then when you want to pull the trigger on that, I think that falls in your hands, coach. So I mean, I would just encourage you in that. But I think it's a great move. And of course, I think the more platforms that you're on, I think that further increases the opportunity for further exposure, especially if you had, I mean, with you as the guest, in addition to, having individuals like Shaq and people like that on your show. I think people would love to check your show out and really enjoy what you have to offer, especially sharing people's journeys. So was that helpful?
Definitely. I think I've definitely taken on board what you said. Now I was trying to think about trying to implement some of that stuff, and I'll definitely connect with you. I followed you just now on obviously on here, and I'm going to follow your page on Instagram as well. Maybe we can touch base, and I can kind of let you know how that's going off the back of this discussion.
Excellent.
But it'll be great if you can check out the podcast as well. It's called the Coaches Network Podcast. It is on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube as well, with some of the episodes, the ones that have been done so far on the video element. But yeah, no, thank you for that.
Excellent. I love it, man. I love it. And yeah, if you please DM me the link to the episode to your podcast. Now I definitely will check it out. I certainly will check it out. But thanks thanks for your question, Coach Yaz, and appreciate you hopping in this room. Vanessa, welcome to the stage. How can I help you? How can I serve and support you? Good afternoon.
Hi, it's the night for me because I am French. So
oh, good. Oh my goodness, Vanessa, this is so wild. I usually always hop on. I say good morning, good afternoon, and good night. And this is the one time, and then you're gonna come on here, and then you're gonna embarrass me. I'm just kidding, Vanessa. How are you doing?
So sorry for my English speaking because it is not the best, but I will try to speak. I want to share my experience because I am a sports marketing blogger for 4 years, and I am a FIFA influencer since the FIFA Women's World Cup in France. And since the last year, I am on TikTok, and I have created a big community where I share for example, behind the scene in soccer, because I was invited in a lot of events. I share some things about soccer in France and sports marketing, and I have not a podcast, but I have seen some podcaster on TikTok, and I think it could be a great opportunity to create quickly a community and to send the follower, the TikTok follower to Instagram too. So that's why I want to share these tips.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really came in and just really dropped the true gem there, Vanessa, because I think it is a great opportunity, just like you said. If somebody's on TikTok and then getting those followers, getting those subscribers, getting the tribe, getting them to cross over to another platform, and I think that's really amazing. So Coach Val, I see you hopped in the room, Coach Val. You heard what she just said. Get your followers on TikTok to cross over and listen to your podcast. And I mean, I think that's an amazing opportunity. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on to share that. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share with us while you're on the stage? Please feel free.
I think what is interesting on TikTok is you can create really quickly a community without money. For example, when I launched my TikTok account, my second video go viral, and there is 1 million views.
Oh my goodness!
And I get 25,000 followers in one day. So I think it's really interesting to go on TikTok and to share your podcast, everything.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna, so I got challenged about TikTok the other day. Shout out to Coach Val, who's in the room with us. She was telling me a little bit about TikTok the other day, and I got challenged. So I'm gonna go on TikTok and I'm gonna follow you. And
okay. And any question you can send me on Instagram or Twitter as you want.
Okay. I definitely appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. That really is good insight and good information to know. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Definitely. Everybody, once again, we're just going to refresh the room really quick. So this is the answering all podcasting questions, because like I said, for my birthday, which is January 25th, I'm gonna be turning 33. So I want to be the Scottie Pippen to somebody's Michael Jordan. Okay, I want you all to successfully launch a podcast. So if you've thought that you should launch a podcast, if you thought or been told that you might have something that you want to share or you want to talk about on a potential podcast, or maybe if you're an individual who's like, I don't think I should do a podcast. If you say that, I really want you to raise your hand, and I really want you to come to the stage, because I just want to talk with you about how it could be a great potential opportunity. Coach Yaz and Vanessa, I'm going to just drop you all back in the audience. But if you all happen to have another question, please feel free to raise your hand. Coach Nate, I'm going to go to you in 1 second, but I'm going to go to Mariah, because I'm a Southern gentleman. So Mariah, please feel free to share your question, or please feel free to share your comment.
Hi, Jonathan. Nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting me up on stage. I literally just saw your Beyond the Ball clubhouse room, or club, I should say club, and I was reading, and I think it's awesome what you're doing. I'm a former student athlete, and if someone was there for me the way you are for people, I think that's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, do you have a question, or is there something else that you wanted to share with the good people?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just being honest here, like, I think it's great what you're doing, and I think that audience is perfect for you just because you are into sports, and I think that's great that you're using your knowledge to help other people. I guess my first question for you is, what made you want to create Beyond the Ball? I'm really curious.
Yeah, so the reason I created Beyond the Ball was honestly just to truly be a resource for student athletes. I know that a lot of student athlete departments have, I know a lot of colleges, have student athlete development departments, but at the same time, I know that the code has not been cracked yet on student athlete development, and that's not a personal attack against any college institution or universities across the country, because the generations are evolving and development is evolving. So ultimately, I think there's always going to be an area of opportunity. I think there's always going to be an area of opportunity to further develop these young leaders. So I wanted to create this opportunity, and I wanted to create this platform because I think that, based on my experience struggling to get to transition out of sport and struggling to find my identity post graduation, I didn't want other student athletes to have to go through those challenges, face those struggles, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was where Beyond the Ball came from. And I named this club Beyond the Ball, but it's also named after my podcast, which is called Beyond the Ball. And I focus on stories, strategies, and successes, ultimately to help student athletes succeed beyond their degree. So that's the same purpose of this club on Clubhouse as well, to help these student athletes, help these young leaders to begin to cultivate that identity a little bit sooner, while they have access to so many more resources, and then also while they can build these connections, these relationships, and then ultimately this will position them to truly thrive when they graduate, or when they're a senior or a junior. They've already had the opportunity to do micro internships. They've already had the opportunity to do a strengths finder, or a skills assessment, or being able to have certain opportunities and being positioned in certain places. That's why I wanted to create Beyond the Ball. And as you can tell, I'm passionate about it because I'm getting long-winded, but I'll just cut it there. But yeah, that's why I do what I do, from the workshops to my podcast to just everything around student athlete development.
That's amazing. I'm just going to love about me just to kind of continue the conversation. I mean, I'm a former athlete. I used to play basketball. I broke my hand my senior year of college, and I was like, what am I going to do next? Because as a former athlete, you never know when your time's up, especially with an injury. Usually it's in college or maybe in high school, but you're never really prepared for the unknown. And when I hurt my hand, I couldn't write. I had to get surgery. It was probably one of the worst times in my life. And then I connected with a mutual connection in the sports industry, and they just kept encouraging me to look for different opportunities and different skill sets that I had. And I went to a marketing role, and now I'm back in a more sports-driven role, which is great. But I think it's great what you're doing. It's an outlet for other people to learn and have these resources.
Definitely. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time, Mariah, to hop on stage and to share that with us, and even to share your story, and even to give me a couple of flowers. I definitely appreciate it. And I definitely would love to stay connected with you. And if I could be a resource in any way, please let me know.
Of course, absolutely. I think it'd be great. I mean, for me, I just always keep telling young athletes, keep getting connected with people, and it seems like you're doing that with your platform. That's awesome. So keep up the good work.
Definitely. I definitely appreciate it. I appreciate it. Coach Nate, I'm gonna go to you in Carolina. I'm coming to you right after. Coach Nate, how we doing, sir?
Man, how's it going, Jonathan, man? Appreciate you. First off, before I get to my question, man, I really appreciate, I feel like I've connected with this app. I've connected with a lot of cool people in the sports industry, but I definitely feel like you have a spirit to serve, in your specific case, athletes, former student athletes. So, I mean, I appreciate that. Just wanted to give you your flowers, but I'm currently in the process of starting a podcast. I've already kind of gotten the social media handle secured, and the domain and everything secured. And I don't know if this is a personal thing. Like I like to listen to podcasts that are more centered around a conversation. And I personally listened to probably about 5 or 6 episodes of Beyond the Ball, of your podcast. And I don't know if this is your personality, but you're pretty good. Most of your interviews are like one-on-one, right? And so my question is, how do you, I just feel like, for some people, not everybody, but, the one-on-one conversations can be kind of awkward for the person that doesn't have necessarily the most outgoing personality, you know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to ask, some advice as far as how do you kind of, deter that, if you kind of get the hint that someone may not have most entertaining personality, or kind of a dry personality, it's not conducive to your energy, because you're like more of a high energy guy, you know what I mean? So, like myself. So, what are some suggestions, for someone kind of to combat that, instead of going the route of having a co-host. You know what I mean? Because I'm battling between a co-host and a situation, or just doing it myself and kind of learning those skills.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a phenomenal question. So one thing or one way that makes it really easy to be able to identify, or well potentially be able to identify, and also just by determining guest selection, right? So one thing I like to do, I like to reach out to people, and then I'll DM them, or I'll DM them or hit them up, however, and then I'll basically say I would love to talk about potentially having you as a guest on my podcast. So that being the introduction, and then from there I'll have like a 10-minute call, 15-minute call with them, and then after that, then you get to make the true decision on if you still want them to be your guest or not, right? Based off like that initial call. And once again, that's why I said in the initial introductory, I say potentially have you as a guest on my podcast. So then after, they agree, or after you're like, okay, the vibe is good, then let me get this individual on the show. That's one route to go. And then another route to go could be after you all have the conversation, then you just don't, you just don't send a link, or you not just don't send a link, but ultimately you just talk about other things, right? You could just say, I want to connect with you and hear more about your story. And then, you could put out there, potentially have you as a guest down the line is something that you could do. But even in addition to that, I think that's the place to start. You get a feel for the people by reaching out and overall just connecting with them first, right? So after you reach out, after you connect, then you can determine, okay, well, let me say that I want to have them as a guest on my podcast. So you might not lead with I potentially would like you to have a guest, but reach out with, I would love to connect with you, and then go from there. And another just bonus tip I'd say is, one thing I do before interviews, if I'm kind of nervous, or if I really want to make sure to structure the conversation the way that I want it to go, just like Oprah does. Oprah's great at this. She will make you talk about what she wants you to talk about. Same thing with Jada Pinkett Smith on that Red Table Talk. But I do a little bit of research, and then I pull specific questions to know the way that I would begin to gear the conversation to getting out of it what I want to get out of it. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Oh yeah, that definitely does help. That's something that, just to get a little bit transparent for people in the audience, like I feel like God gave me a vision to do the podcast. My first inclination was to get a co-host, just because I like to listen to that type of vibe. I like to listen to podcasts that have a host and a co-host. It's like 3 or 4 people. And that's just my preference, but that doesn't necessarily mean that potential audience will like that. That's just something I personally like. So I guess I'm still struggling with that idea. But if I'm going to start something that's centered around my podcast, and eventually hopefully venture into business with the audience and the community, I have to come to grips with, until someone maybe God presents somebody to me. That's my vision and my vision only. Even if I didn't have some people in mind that maybe the co-host is still my vision, you know what I mean?
True.
That's why I really wanted to ask you questions. So I was like, maybe I just need to kind of maybe develop some skills to where I'm a little more comfortable with a one-on-one conversation, and develop some skills to make that more of a marketable conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, even this, Nate, like the fact of you haven't, let's say you did have guests. You can intentionally invite guests, or in that intro talk, you can begin to get a feel for people to where, how can I put this? Okay, Charlemagne is the best example. Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club is the best example of this. Sometimes I'm not sure I'm able to tell what their personal beliefs are, because sometimes the way they ask questions, you would think their personal belief is different than that of the guest, because ultimately it's going to get a different response out of the guest, as opposed to like if I ask you, Nate, who is, and this might be controversial, but people, I'm just saying this just for the sake of conversation. But if I ask Nate, and Nate, don't answer this question, I'm not going to answer it. But if I was like, Nate, who would you say is the most attractive out of Destiny's Child, right? Then you might say something, somebody else might say something, somebody might say Beyonce, somebody might say Michelle, somebody might say Kelly. But at the end of the day, when there's those different perspectives, now it's going to create a different level of conversation versus if everybody said that Michelle was the most attractive out of Destiny's Child. We can't build a conversation on that because we're meeting in the middle versus if somebody says Beyonce looks the best or somebody else says Kelly looks the best, then we can go deeper and then further unpack, well, why do you think this versus that? And why do you think this versus that? I shared that just to give an analogy, but I'm gonna share this point and then I'll be done. But ultimately, Noah had to build the ark first. And then he brought in the animals, and then he brought in his family. Everybody on the outside said Noah was crazy. So Nate has to build the podcast first. People will come along later for the purpose of them being served by the content that you're presenting. And Patrick knows this. And Patrick, I'm just going to bring you on the stage because I know you'll just be able to help me if you got time. If you got time, I'll bring you on the stage just to hang out a little bit. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Nate, when in this podcasting space, if let's say you started out with a co-host and then your co-host wasn't as passionate because this was your vision, this was your dream, etc., you don't want to carry that dead weight. And you don't also want to have to worry about trying to get a time together so y'all can record. If you're ready to record, you want to just be ready to record and ready to roll. So ultimately, that's just what I'd say there. But if you got any further questions, you already know, hit me up. Let me know. Let me know.
Appreciate that, Jonathan. Appreciate it, man. Wonderful answer. Appreciate that, bro.
Most definitely. My brother. Patrick, man, I just wanted to bring you on the stage, Patrick. Really quick, Carolina, I'm coming to you in 1 second, I promise. But Patrick, really quick, and Nate, I hope it don't seem like we beating a dead horse. But Pat, can you just talk about you having your show initially with a co-host and then transitioning from having a co-host? Just really briefly.
Oh man, first off, thank you for having me here, Jonathan. I was messaging. This is so funny. I was messaging you while you were giving him all this advice. I'm like, cause I'm looking upstairs. I was like, man, that's spot on what you're telling him. Like, I'm just like, but then when you said something, I was like, oh, this is deleted. He called me up. So man, Nate, as a person that has his own show now, the dilemma that I had, I was listening to you talk, Nate, and Nathan, I don't know if you like to call you Nate, but I was listening. No, it's good, bro. You're good. Oh, well, cool. So I'm sitting up here like, man, I feel him, man. I feel the points of like when you're ready to record something, you're ready to do something. Like there's a lot of things that go into consideration that people don't consider when they want co-hosts and those things of that nature, right? Like timing, scheduling, those type of things. Like if a person, their work ethic, it may not match yours, and now what looked good on the surface as a person you saw that you had a good relationship with, when those purposes don't align, and you're sitting there wondering like, man, why doesn't this work? Why isn't this happening? Like those are, and I'm not saying that it can't work because I made it work with John and I, my former co-host, made it work for 3 seasons, 1 through 3, and with season 4, I was like, I just took the realm and the helm, and it was like, all right, I'm about to just make it work because I knew by being my own content creator, doing things coming up with themes, I do with the podcast, like a lot of that was just me anyway. So just make sure that if you are trying to partner up with somebody, nothing's gonna be perfect, but just try to see how many things align and they don't, because that plays a huge part into having your own show or having a show with somebody, because that's like, if you look at it like this, that's like somebody having a baby with each other, and if you don't love this baby as much as I love this baby, then we probably shouldn't. Well, let's say that the notion of having a baby, like we can't do this thing together, and we probably shouldn't be doing it. And that's just what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's like, man, that's a real big decision that you got to make. So before you just go on a whim on that short-term decision, man, make sure you factor it all out before you do that.
That's it. My man says just like having a baby. That's real talk right there. That's real talk. Everybody, really quick, we're just going to refresh everything, man. We're answering all questions. Podcasting are all podcasting questions. Man, I'm streaming over here on YouTube. We on Instagram TV or Instagram Live, whatever, and Clubhouse. So y'all, whatever question you have, whatever platform you're on, come to the stage if it's Clubhouse, or drop your question in the comments. And we're gonna help you out. Carolina, please go ahead and ask your question so we can help you out.
Hello to all. Nice to meet you. First of all, sorry for my English, and thank you for letting me participate. I'm Carolina from Mexico. I had a podcast, creator and producer. The name is Mama Pambolera. Pambolera is an Spanish term that is used for people who love soccer.
Okay.
My mission with this podcast is I'm looking to promote a full development in children through sports. For me, sports has a lot of benefits, and I want to let it know to all moms and dads about this, so they can raise their kids in a very full development. And my question is, how can I, to reach to more audience here in Mexico? The podcasting, is very new, but in the States, I know it's huge, and just to know your experience and all this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Patrick, I'm gonna let you go first and answer the question. I'm gonna backdoor your answer. If there's anything else I need to add, I feel like you're gonna take it. But if you wanna, or if you're in a
No. I was just gonna say, as far as getting seen, how are you on Instagram, Carolina?
Sorry?
I said, how's your interaction? I'm just gonna look at it. I'm going to see. You know what? In my opinion, make sure that you add your Instagram to your profile. You got it in there, but you don't have it linked to it. So, when you come up here and you speak, people can go straight to your Instagram, because I can definitely help you try to get your videos going on Instagram. Like my analytics alone, like I see that Mexico is fairly new to podcasting, because I don't have a really big following in Mexico. So by it still being new, that can definitely be playing a part into your viewership and your analytics. So that's one and foremost, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, one thing I also will say, since you're on this platform, Carolina, I think a great opportunity is for you maybe to start a room one day, right? Just start a room, and then you can make the topic of that room like the topic of the name of your podcast, the title of your podcast, and you can see what other people are interested in that. And then as people are in the room, you begin to facilitate conversations around it, and then you drive people to your podcast by the title of the room being the name of your podcast. But in addition to that, making the title of rooms topics that you cover on your podcast. Like for instance, let me just look at your profile one more time. Where I look to promote sport. Okay, so you're looking to promote full development in children through sports. Wow. Yeah. So one thing is great that you're doing is you're already niched into sports and into developing children. So your market would be like the youth market as well as like the parents. So I think that's excellent in itself, what you're doing right there. But just like I said before, if you begin to put up topics around those two themes, then you'll be amazed that people are going to start to hop in the room. And I've seen these rooms that I've been doing since I've been doing it 10 days straight or something like that up until this point. This room has even grown to, I think, like maybe 20 people or 20 or 30 people, whatever it might be. But when you show consistency and when you keep showing up, then people start hopping in the room, and then people will ask you about your podcast. Or even if they don't ask you, what I always do is I introduce myself and I say, I'm the host of the Beyond the Ball podcast. And I probably say that 10 or 15 times throughout the course of me doing these broadcasts on Clubhouse and different places like that. And as you heard Coach Nate said earlier, he said he's listened to my podcast, a few of the episodes, because I've continued to make mention of my podcast. Does that help, Carolina? Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much. And of course, I will follow all these, all your words. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And Jonathan, that's funny though too, because my club is also the name of my podcast too. And when you're saying that, I'm like, man, we were thinking alike in that regard, because I was like, why did I just name my club what my podcast is? So when
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things that really makes sense. And I think market research has shown us here lately, I think it's 27 times. So people need to be exposed to your brand or your product 27 times before they click play, before they click buy, or whatever it might be. So now we have to get really strategic on how we sliding stuff in people's faces, just like you were talking about, Patrick, with starting a club and naming it after your podcast. And then even outside of that, mentioning the podcast, and then talking, oh, well, on this episode, because I think I've heard you say this a couple of times, Patrick, because I mean, it's so ingrained within you. You're like, yeah, on my podcast episode 2 weeks ago, or last week, or just the other day, this is what we talked about. So, as we began to, or as we really want to get really intentional on promoting our podcast, because at the end of the day, we have the opportunity to promote our podcast, and we have the ability to have a successful podcast. The question is, are we marketing the content? Because a lot of times the content is great. The content is amazing. The content is really helping change people's lives. I know that's your message, Patrick. But at the end of the day, if nobody gets the content, then it's not changing nobody's life. So we have to do some of the stuff on the back end that might not be as desirable and as glamorous, but ultimately it gets the job done. What you got for me, Patrick? What you got?
No, I was just clapping, but I so totally agree with you because, man, that's what one thing about this app has changed and helped propel me.
Yeah.
Things like I've been saying this type of stuff for so long.
Y'all, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop your questions. Drop your questions. Drop your questions.
That's going to get you out there because even though there may not be a big movement in Mexico where you're at, this app is setting you apart from everywhere else because now you are everywhere else now. So you start coming on here, you start hosting these rooms.
If y'all have questions,
you're bringing that traction and that traffic to you. So it's really nice that you said that. That's really the formula.
Yeah, man. I mean, it really is the formula because I saw one of my friends out here. They're in Dallas. The name of their podcast is, golly, what is the name of their podcast? Don't Take It Personal. So the name of their podcast is Don't Take It Personal. And I saw them do this blueprint some time ago. They were on Facebook. They created a Facebook group, and the listeners that really enjoy the content, they would put them all inside of the Facebook group. So then as soon as they dropped an episode, they would inform the group, hey, we're dropping this new episode. Comment below what you enjoyed about this episode, your favorite takeaway, whatever it might be. But ultimately, you have to listen to the episode to be able to give a takeaway. So understanding that they did that, and I was like, I was like, wait a minute, Patrick, wait a minute. Success always leaves clues. I said, wait a minute. So then I said, okay, well, let's go on Clubhouse and let's do this on Clubhouse. So now anytime I do anything that's around this club, which is Beyond the Ball, because I focus on working with student athletes and helping them further develop outside of their sport, then I always make mention of the podcast, of the club. And it's going to get so embedded in people's heads and their minds that when they pick up their phone, they're going to start saying, oh, wait, what? I was about to listen to a podcast, and then boom, they're going to think, boom, Beyond the Ball. They're going to think Clear Fitness Podcast. So, man, we're making sure to stay at the forefront of people's minds, because that's how we get the attention. That's how we win the click to get people to listen to our podcast. And I mean, that's just how we win and help other people win.
Man, you are saying that's why I'm so glad that it's people that look like us that are talking about these type of things. Man, I'm not even just saying it like this really just put out to me. I didn't know we existed.
Man, yeah. Talk that, Patrick.
Wow. That's just the real. I was like, I did not know that we existed. So when I came on here, and I'm like, wait a minute, we get to talk about podcasts, the thing that I actually learned on by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really did. It fell into my lap, and it was an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm about to do something that I've never done before.
Yeah.
And I actually feel good about it. I was gonna take that leap. So man,
yeah, man.
Right now,
Man, my man. Okay, I'm glad somebody asked a question, y'all, because we're gonna get ready to wrap this up. I'm supposed to be interviewing somebody for my podcast at 4:00 Central Standard Time. So, Roger, really quick, let me refresh the room, and I'm gonna kick it to you for your question or your comment. But everybody, we're in the Beyond the Ball Club. If you're rocking with us on Clubhouse, That is the club that I named. And the reason I named it Beyond the Ball is because we focus on helping student athletes succeed beyond their degree. So talking about professional development, personal development, as well as mental health strategies. So if you feel that content resonates with you, please click the house and join the club. Also, I got my man Patrick up here. He's also co-moderating with me. And man, Patrick is just, he's the podcast plug. Okay. Patrick is the podcast plug because his podcast is Clear Mind Fitness Podcast. And man, it's just inspiration and motivation, but also some tactical stuff that's connected. So y'all be sure, connect with the moderators on stage, connect with everybody on stage, man. There's just some dope people on stage. But Roger, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it to you and open it. Please drop your question, sir.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear, we got you.
Am I live? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. I was muting myself. Yes, sir. I can hear you. You're loud and clear.
Okay, listen, appreciate what you guys are doing out here. I'm here in Arkansas, and I'm in the insurance business. I specialize in Medicare. So my question is, what is the philosophy behind podcasts? Is it to move a product? Is it just to inform the public, or trying to determine if something like that would be good for me to be doing? Are you monetizing it, or is it just a service to the public?
Excellent question. And